Good morning and welcome to Shattering Myths, a program devoted to those who know that the world's political, religious, media, military, and economic institutions are rotten to the core, that they are the problem, and that there are no religious, political, or military solutions to what ails our planet. Our mission, therefore, is to look behind the headlines, to know who is perpetrating the crimes that over the course of the next 15 years will continue to wreak havoc on our world. As a result of these catastrophes, which cannot be solved collectively, but individuals can be saved from them, we're going to use evidence and reason to explore the only place where answers can be found, where truth is reliable and available. And it's the Torah, which means teaching of Yahowah, and its presentation of the covenant, which is a family-oriented relationship. Our phone number, if you'd like to participate in this discussion, is toll-free. It is 877-300-7645. I'd like to move on to the next statement that Yahowah made, because we spent a great deal of time analyzing the previous one about how those who overtly engage to demean, to annul, to discredit, to disavow the nature of Yahowah as Abraham, our merciful, enriching, and empowering Father, and those who speak ill of the covenant formulated in the Torah between Yahowah and Abraham, become God's foes, and that he is not going to simply look the other way, but will, in fact, hold them accountable. That's the passage we looked at yesterday. Today we move on. We do have my good friend Larry with us, and God said, and through you, this is Abram at the time, a man who would become known as Abraham, the man that Yahowah established his one and only covenant with. And through you, the entire human family of the earth will be adored and blessed. 12:3. So after God says, those who oppose you, oppose what you stand for, are going to become my foes, and I'm going to hold them accountable. God says the opposite here is true for those who embrace you, through you. So if we're going to be through Abraham, my friend Larry, how do we put ourselves on the blessing side rather than the cursing side if the angle here is you're on the curse side if you trivialize, demean, discredit the merits of this covenant that Yahowah established with Abraham? How do you get on the good side, you suppose?
Well, we'd do the exact opposite. We'd share his words, we'd lift those up, and we'd advance the notions that Yahowah means what he says, and that, he's got a family covenant, not a religion.
Yeah.
And
so perhaps the path might be observe what God had to say to us about this covenant and about this man and his relationship with him. So you'd observe it. To observe it, what do you think the most effective way to observe something that is communicated to us in writing, as is this story?
Probably read it.
Okay,
probably read it. The best way to observe it. Yeah.
Okay. So if you were to read it, you would go to the Torah. Its opening book is Bereshit. It's been renamed to Genesis. And you would read this story about Yahowah's discussions and interactions with Abram and Abraham to determine what the covenant's all about. So that's the first thing you would do, right?
That would be correct.
Okay. Now, the next thing you may want to do is to try to come to know better the author of this covenant, the author of the Torah, and perhaps even come to understand precisely what he's offering and how we would go about capitalizing upon the offer. Would that be the next step?
That would be a good idea, yes.
Okay. So to transition from knowing to understanding, you can come to know by reading, right?
That's right.
So you want to transition, you want to be on the good side of this. You want to receive the blessings of this. You want to be loved by God as opposed to hated by God or just ignored by God. You want to go from knowing, because you recognize that knowing is a good thing, but Hasatan knows everything there is about Yahweh. He knows how to pronounce his name. He knows the Torah inside and out. He knows exactly who God is and what he's offering. That's not going to do him any good. So knowing alone isn't sufficient. So you recognize you've got to make the transition from knowing to understanding. How do you think you'd go about doing that?
Well, I think that I'd understand it by reading it, and then I would act upon the things that Yahowah said were important for me to act upon, like his Moed Mikra as an example.
Yeah,
like
I think you're missing a step, Larry. I think you innately understand that there's a step in there, but you really aren't in a position to respond appropriately to someone and something until you understand what's being offered. For example, Yahowah speaks of in the second codicil of his covenant. He says, "Trust and rely upon me." Now, just because you know somebody, if you really know them, I suppose you can choose to trust them. But when you're talking about here, God is speaking specifically of his covenant here. So, for you to rely on his covenant, the only way for you to do that is you really have to understand what the covenant's all about. You've got to understand how it's constructed, what it represents, what it's offering, what it requires of us. Trust is not like faith. With faith you can simply move directly to the end game. You don't have to know or understand anything. It's just, I believe. That's why God doesn't like faith very much. To trust and rely, which is the second codicil of the covenant, you have to come to know and understand. And I'm going to propose that the only way that you can understand what the Torah is all about and what its covenant is all about and who Yahowah is in relationship to his covenant is why he chose Abraham as the name, why he chose covenant, Bereth, as the title, is to make connections, is to come to be discerning, to come to exercise good judgment, to ponder and consider all of the implications and make relationships between things. So let me give you an example. This covenant is what we're talking about. If you want to understand the covenant's kind of a stiff word. In English anyway. It's sort of a stiff word, covenant. It sounds like this, it's something that might even be a religious institution would establish. No, it isn't, but covenant. So what is this covenant? Bereth.
Well, it's Bereth based on Beeth.
Beeth. Okay, now there's a clue. Now you're thinking. That you want to understand covenant, you need to understand what the word in Hebrew, Bereth, is based upon. It's based upon Be'eth and Bana. Bana means to build a home, to rebuild a home, and to establish one's family name. Bana. And Be'eth means family, home, and household. Okay, so by studying, making the connections to the roots of these words, we now understand the nature of Be'eth, Bereth, Bana, covenant. But I bet we can even go further. You recognize the letters that comprise Be'eth and Bereth, and that they both start with the Hebrew Beth. Do you know how the Hebrew Beth was depicted?
No.
Okay.
Right off.
It's to say no is not a problem. That's really the opportunity for learning. Because my guess is that most people in the audience don't know how Yahowah scribed the letter Beth when he wrote it in stone. The letter Beth was created in the form of a home with a single entrance. It's the floor plan of a home with a single entrance. And so
it even had a little roof on the top.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So the Be'eth, the letter Beth, the second letter in the Hebrew alphabet, a consonant, is drawn to depict home, family, protection, one door in to this family. That's how it was drawn. So that gives you a pretty good idea, doesn't it?
Yes,
now,
it does.
The next letter in Be'eth and also in Bereth is a yod. Now, I bet you can tell our listeners how the yod was the letter Yod was drawn by Yahowah and what it meant and what it...
And reaching out, actually down and out.
Right. The upper arm comes down, the forearm reaches out, and it's an open hand, correct?
That's right.
If you, since it's the first letter of Yahowah's name, it's the second letter of covenant. The fact that the upper arm is coming down and the forearm is reaching out and the hand is open, those are all really, really good things, aren't they?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, particularly when Yahowah named this the individuals with whom he formed the covenant, by which name he was going to do mighty things in the world. Abraham, because he's depicting himself. Abraham is the father who is merciful and uplifting. So what God is depicting here is as our father and as the father of the covenant's children, he is reaching down and out to us with an open hand. And when a father reaches down and out to a child with an open hand, what is that the symbol of? What is the father telling it through nonverbal means? What is the father telling the child
acceptance
that he wants to do?
Invitation, he wants to pick him up.
Right, all those things. I'm reaching out to you, that I want to touch you, that I want to caress you, that I want to hold you, and more important than anything, I want to lift you up. Right? And when a father keeps their hand and arm in that kind of position with a child as the child grows, they're typically walking arm in arm, hand in hand, doing things together.
Right. I mean, so, in this case, obviously, Yahweh's looking to pick us up because that's what he says he does.
So that's a pretty good start for this word. So you got God reaching down and out with an open hand to lift up and to adore, to interact with the children who live in his family home. Those are the first two letters. That's a pretty good start. Now, we're coming to understand what this covenant is all about now. What's the third letter in Bereth that does not exist in Bayeth? The only letter that distinguishes this family covenant relationship from just the Hebrew word from family and home. When we return to Shattering Myths, we'll consider the third letter in Bereth, and come to understand what it means so that we understand what this covenant is all about, so all of us can respond to it. We'll be back in a moment. To Shattering Myths. We're trying to transition between knowing and understanding, and Yahowah gave us a tremendous gift when it comes to the letters that comprise the Hebrew words, and that is because they were all initially drawn to depict important concepts. They made it possible, and I've had so many parents share this with me, for those who are not yet even literate, when they look at the images that comprise the letters, to understand what is being said. It was extraordinarily important initially for many of the children of Israel. They were looking at things like the 10 statements that got etched in stone, is that even if you couldn't read, you knew what God was talking about, because the first alphabet in human history, Hebrew, had letters that represented sounds that were drawn to symbolize images. And we have the first two in Bereth. And they are depicted as a home that is where God is reaching down and out with an open hand to lift up his children. Those are the first two letters in this name, in this title, for probably the most important title in the Torah, Prophets, and Psalms, Bereth, Covenant. So, Larry, I've given you a little more time now with the commercial break. My guess is now you can tell us what the third letter is of Bereth and how Bereth, therefore, differs
the resh,
from Bayeth.
Which would be depicted as a human head, basically, and it's the side view. So you got ear there. You know, you're supposed to be listening and thinking about it.
You can see the eye socket, you can see the ear, you can see the head, and you can see the nose and the mouth all depicted in profile view. Now, let's think about what is being communicated here. So God is saying that I've got this this family and this protective home, and that I myself, with my own engagement, with my arm and hand, am going to engage with my children in this home. And then the next letter is a picture of a human head. So he's telling me that the individuals for whom I am doing these things and providing this are humans. I'm doing it for men and women. Now, the next thing it would be is that he didn't show a picture of a heart. I'm not doing this through touchy-feely. He didn't, Christians say, oh, God knows what's in my heart. Well, no. He showed a head. It's what's in your head that matters.
It's a thought. The whole heart thing. The heart was a seat of judgment anyway. So,
right. But it does not now. Yeah. So now, Larry, if with this head being depicted here, have not we begun the process of answering that question as to how do you go to from being ignorant to knowing, and then from knowing to understanding? It's all shown right there. And so God is showing us the way that we can participate in his family, live in his home, and walk with him arm in arm. And that is, we use our eyes and our ears. God is constantly telling us to listen to him. How do you listen to God? You sit there in a dark corner someplace and get on your knees and just say, okay, God, I'm ready to listen to you. Is that going to work? No. How do you listen to God?
You read his words. That's why they call him his words. He calls them his words. He doesn't even really call them scripture, other than I think once in Daniel.
No. Well, actually, he isn't. The word for scripture is just a transliteration of the Latin word for writing. So this notion that scripture has no, there's no word for scripture anywhere in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms.
In Daniel,
no.
He calls them his words, his writings, and that's what he calls them, and that's the end of it. That's what I call them. So.
Right. Debar is the word that he uses, and of course Debar ends with your same rosh at the end of Debar, which tells you where you listen to the words, and if you recite Yah's testimony, then you can listen to what God has to say. And that's one of the things that I do routinely. When I'm sitting here in my study and I'm translating a passage, I'm working on something, and I want to understand the full implications of what God is communicating, I recite what God said out loud. I'll read it in the Hebrew and I'll read it in the English. And then there's something about the process of looking with your eyes and seeing the letters and then vocalizing what God said and processing it through your eyes and your ears and then into your brain. Now, it shows a brain there. What do we do in our brains?
Well, we reason, we think.
Yeah, we process information, we reason, and we think. And so if you want to be able to trust and rely on Yahowah, you have to listen to what he had to say, you have to observe what he had to say, you have to process it in your brain, and then and only then are you in a position to respond. We'll consider the last letter in both Bayeth and Beireth and what it means to us and to our understanding when Shattering Myths continues after the commercial break. To Shattering Myths. Larry, before we talk about the last letter that comprises both Bayeth, family and home, and Beireth, the family-oriented covenant relationship, a good friend of mine, the man who really started the whole process of me participating in radio talk programs, a guy that a whole lot of years ago I met at a convention, and he agreed to work as my publicist to help me promote what I had learned about Islam, particularly as I had written Tea with Terrorists and later Prophet of Doom. And it's interesting. This fellow. His first name is Jerry. He's been
He's been on the show before.
Yeah, he's been on the show before. He's a really interesting guy. We talked to him about his movie, which was based upon the Prodigal Son, which is now finished and about to be released in theaters a long way away. And he this morning booked me on a show on Talk Radio Network that it appeared like the host was a bit taken back by how strongly I came across. And so we've been communicating this morning. He's listening to the show this morning. He shared something. I just like to give credit to where credit is due. And this is typically I wouldn't have this long a build up to something, but what he shared is really quite profound. You know that life is comprised of amino acids, and that amino acids play a very important role as in the language of life with DNA. You know how many letters there are, Larry, in the Hebrew alphabet?
What is it, 20, 21?
22. Yeah. I'd like to guess how many amino acids there are. They composite the building blocks of life.
22. Yeah,
22 amino acids.
Side amino acids, too.
Yeah. 22 amino acids, the building blocks of life, and 22 letters that comprise the words of this Torah teaching on the covenant. Did Yosha ever emphasize the importance of the letters that comprise the words that we're reading here in the Torah? Ever speak directly of the letters themselves? And that's pretty much detailed. He was a big picture guy. Do you think there's any time when Yosha specifically said, you need to pay attention to how even the smallest letter and the strokes that comprise each of the letters that comprise the Torah, how they're written? And that would be the extraordinary detail. But as we're now considering how these letters actually communicate meaning to us, that would be a very profound detail that if we neglected, we would deprive ourselves of understanding. Did you recall any place where he got into that level of detail, where he said, I want you to look at these... Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
At the beginning of what? What was the context?
Boy, I have to find it.
It's in Matanyahu, the 5th chapter. And the 5th chapter of Matanyahu opens with Yosha in his first and largest and most significant public disclosure.
Yeah, you're talking about his statement on the mound, if you will.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it's called the Sermon on the Mount. The sermon is kind of a religious term, and I'll use it just in the sense that people understand the timing of the whole thing. But his instruction on the Mount, his teaching, his statements on the Mount is the timing of this. And what he says is that he first explains the nature of the gift from our Heavenly Father, and he is telling us about how narrow the doorway is to life and how few people find it. Says specifically that it is extraordinarily unpopular, and truth is very unpopular. This doorway to life is so unpopular, and that very few people find it. The doorway to life is Passover, and you'll find it only in the Torah. And that he says that the way to death and destruction is extraordinarily popular. And many find it because religion and politics and militarism and economics all lead to death and destruction.
Right.
And he says, do not even contemplate for a moment. Don't think that I have come to annul, to invalidate, to do anything that would push the Torah aside. So what he's saying here is that he's talking about this specific statement that we just read. He's talking about that he is the living antithesis of negating or invalidating the Torah and its covenant. He's the living antithesis of that.
I mean, what he says there in Matanyahu 5:18, I pulled it up, is, truly I say to you, until the heaven and the earth pass away, not one iota, with jot, smallest letter in Hebrew, which the rabbis turned that yod, that hand, into a little iota,
right,
nor tittle, which is the top stroke of the Hebrew letter, shall be passed by from that which was established in the Torah until the time and place it all happens. And, the last I checked, it hasn't all happened yet. The heaven and the earth still remain.
Yes, exactly. What I was providing is the context to understand the power of the statement you just read. And so the context is, he has explained that the gift of life comes from the Father, Yahowah. He has explained that most people walk in the wrong direction, but there are a few, relatively few, who walk in the right direction and embrace life, where the vast preponderance of people walk towards their own death and destruction. And then he says, do not for a moment think that I came to invalidate or annul or do away with any aspect of the Torah. Then he gets down into this detail, and you read the detail. And what he's saying, and he spoke this in Hebrew, not in Greek, what he said is, even the smallest letter, and this is the nature of Yahowah, the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet happens to be the first letter that comprises Yahweh's name. That tells you everything you need to know about his approach to us and his willingness to be humble so that we can approach him without being afraid of him. He says that not even the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet, which is the yod, which is this hand that is reaching down and out to us with his open hand, not even this yod, nor the tittles, which are the strokes that comprise the rest of the Hebrew letters. So even the strokes that comprise the letters, what are we considering right now to understand covenant? We're understanding the strokes that comprise these letters, how they appear. And so if you want to understand, this is what he told you to do. And he told you, I'm not just telling you if you want to understand from a big picture point of view. He's saying, if you want to be on the path that leads to life, and among the few, as opposed to the many that are walking to their own death and destruction through religion and politics and whatever. It says, this is where you need to look. Now, there's a very, very profound conclusion to this that, I got to tell you, I was deeply troubled with for years. And it wasn't until I translated the whole of Yirmiyahu, which is Jeremiah 31, that I came to understand the conclusion of this. Now, I would have thought, speaking of his Torah and the letters that comprise, the strokes that comprise the letters, which comprise the words, which comprise his Torah teaching, I would have thought that he would have said that his teaching will endure forever. But that's not what he said. Why don't you read the end of it? How long are these things going to endure?
Till the end of the universe.
So long as the heavens and the earth exist, and so long as they are, until they're all fulfilled, they will continue to endure. Why did he put that into while the heavens and earth exist?
Because at the end of the millennial Shabbat, he's going to remake the universe in front of us.
Correct. And what we learn when we analyze Yirmiyahu 31, that's the passage that Christians cite out of context and mistranslate it, and they take it completely out of context, to say that God sanctioned their New Testament with a new covenant.
Well, first of all, he said, I'm going to renew, and we know it's renew because we go later into the books, and Zechariah says, his day of restoration and renewal is coming, not his new day.
Kodesh is based upon the verb kadash. Kadash means to renew, to reaffirm. But beyond that, of course, Yahowah begins this by saying that the renewal and reaffirmation of his covenant is going to be with Yehudim, or Yehudah, and with Yisrael. Right.
The only difference is going to be he's going to write the Torah in their hearts. So,
correct. So,
if you've got some new idea of the gospel of gratia, the gospel of gratia, the gospel of grace is going to save you. Well, guess what? You tried to annul the Torah, and by doing so, you've cut yourself out of the family.
Right. So what God tells us there is that the renewal and reaffirmation of his covenant is going to be with Yehudah and with Israel. That the family is going to be reunited, and that that the only difference between this covenant and the one that he established with Abraham is that this time, rather than having the Torah as a book that we can choose to read, to recite, to listen to observe, to think about, to understand, to respond to, or even, as many people do in religion, to annul and reject and despise, as the case of with Christians. Rather than having that option, which we have now, which we have to have for free will to be in effect. Once everyone has made their choice and Yahowah returns, he then can write a copy of his Torah inside of us. And so it's literally integrated into the fabric of our lives. Now, we can't do that now because there are still those who are making these choices. But once everyone has made their choice and he returns, he can do that. But then you have to realize what Torah means to understand why he ended that statement, so long as the heavens and earth exist. Because you are right. During the millennial Shabbat, which is going to begin in 2033 on our pagan calendars, year 6000 Yah, on Sukkah, which is shelters. From that point on, for 1,000 years, the Torah as it currently exists will be the fabric of life and the constitution of life on earth. But in eternity, the Torah capital T as it presently exists won't do us any good. We will have all made the choice. We will all know the consequences of opposing God. When we move into eternity, what we need is God's guidance, but Torah lowercase t, if you will, so that we understand how to operate all of our new advanced features. The fact that we'll be seven-dimensional, that we're going to have a tenfold empowerment, that we're going to be able to travel at the speed of light. And in that context, God's got to give us a set of instructions that help us enjoy this time we'll spend in eternity. And so there will be a Torah lowercase t that will be shared with us then, but the existing Torah, it doesn't matter anymore. Welcome back to Shattering Myths in our last segment here. Before we bring Glenn on, I just want to mention the last letter. The last letter is Teth. It was depicted as an X. It has the same meaning today that it had many thousands of years ago. When you signed your name, if you will, you said, these are my words. I'm putting my mark on it. You can reliably not only know that this is from me because I'm signing this, but this is my oath. This is my promise. By putting your mark on your testimony, your written communication, you're saying you can trust this. Trust and rely upon that which I've conveyed. Those are the letters that comprise the family of God and this covenant, this formalized relationship that Yahowah has offered to all of us. Now, we're in a position to not only understand what God is offering, but to do that last thing in the step, which is to respond. And that's why we have our mouths. We can respond to God, but it's a whole lot better to listen to what he has to say, to observe what he has to say, to think about what he has to say, to come to know and understand what he has to say before you respond. That's the problem with Christian prayer, is they want to talk to God as opposed to listen to what he has to say. Hello, Glenn. Welcome to Shattering Myths. It's always good to hear from you.
Good morning, Yada. Well, always. Sometimes I say something challenging.
Yes, you do. Oh, okay, but just to your credit, there were two times where I actually hung up on you in the last 6 months, and I was kind of frustrated by what you had to say both times. But the next time you called in, I brought you right back into the show, and you've had now, I think it's 10 calls in a row where what you said was not only on topic, our dialogue afterward was extremely helpful and expanding what we were discussing, help people expand their understanding. So I just want to go out of my way to say thank you. I've been really appreciative of the calls that you've had. The last 10 to 12 have been spectacular.
Well, and I hope, I know you guys spend a lot of time in adversarial interactions, and I think you're getting it. Even when I ask things, I ask them I challenge in good faith without malice.
Yeah.
And in the spirit of that, the content this morning of all the alphabetic stuff.
Yes.
I experienced some discomfort about methodology, and I suspect that this is a professionally developed habit here, and I just wanted to ask that. I've noticed you have a tendency to lead Larry and IQ through syllogistic sequences of questions, much as one might examine a witness on the stand. Mm-hmm. And there's this predetermined desired response, and there's always this anxiety of waiting with bated breath to see if the hearer gets the quiz question right.
Yeah.
Sometimes they may not
why
be
that is.
Yeah, you're right. By the way, you are right. Go ahead, Larry. You're right. I am sometimes uncomfortable with it, by the way. So, Glenn, it's a good point.
Yeah, it's true, but the reason that I even come on, and believe me, I share Yahowah's words constantly, and normally it's in an adversarial situation, unlike this. The reason that I come on here is because I realize that it is painstakingly hard to just read for a solid hour. You want to bounce something off somebody. Every now and then, if you notice, Glenn, I'll even throw some of my stuff in,
Right.
But,
kind of cool. Yeah.
Well, Glenn, what I'm trying to accomplish here, and this is, in fact, I just wrote a good friend of mine a letter on this during the commercial break, is that by using Larry, and Larry doesn't mind being used. I like being used, so this is not a demeaning comment. By using Larry in this way, and I never know when Larry's going to call in, and I never know what Larry's going to want to talk about. And I don't know if Larry knows the answer or doesn't know the answer to some of these questions, and I'm actually happier when he doesn't know the answer. Because let me tell you this, and Larry it takes a big man to put himself in a position where I ask a question that he doesn't know, on radio where tens of thousands of people listen. Because what it does is it makes this process of understanding more down to earth, so that people say, I don't know the answer to that question either. And by sharing it with an individual and us collectively coming to these conclusions, it makes the access to this information and understanding more accessible to everyone. And it's a more entertaining way to do it than, the last thing I want to be is the guy that's just sitting up there at the rostrum providing a lecture. I'm not qualified to do it and don't want to do it, and you wouldn't want to listen to it. So
I know Larry gets it. Sometimes IQ isn't quite sure where you're...
Yeah.